When we do conflict resolution workshops, one of the things I find really interesting is how the vast majority of leaders, they want a shortcut. They just want myself or my associates to teach them, how do we get everybody at peace? Like, how do we just make the conflict go away? How do we get everybody on the same page? And the reason that I find that kind of interesting is because it's the completely backwards focus. You see, if I'm in management, part of my job is to help people get along. When I'm in management, I'm not doing the procedures or the tasks or the protocols that the company typically does. I mean, think about this. I don't care if you're in manufacturing. I don't care if you're doing some sort of surgical procedure. I don't care if you are in some sort of assembly line work. See, in most businesses, what you do is you perform a task or a procedure or a protocol. If you're good at the task, the procedure, or the protocol, then what happens is you typically get promoted. You're more productive. If you're more productive, then you're more profitable. If you're more profitable, then the company looks at you with favor, and those are the people that they want to promote. They don't want to promote people that are lazy or ineffective. So, I mean, this is pretty standard in the workplace. If you're good at something, you get promoted. The trouble is, the higher you get promoted, the closer you come to something called management. And management is now about managing people. Management is not about how to make more widgets per hour on the assembly line. Management is not about a more effective way of putting together, a steering assembly in car manufacturing. Management is not about how to do a surgical procedure faster. No, management, specifically in medicine, is how to get all of the different aspects of the hospital or the clinic to work together to facilitate the surgeon so they can do more procedures, help more people, and yes, bill more procedures, because that's what gets surgeons paid. We get paid by the surgery we do. We don't get paid by the hour. We get paid by their procedure. But the fact of the matter is, if my sterilization crew isn't working very well, if the administration isn't working well, if the scheduling isn't working very well, if I've got, different scrub nurses working in an operating room and they're fighting with each other, then you know what? Everything's going to slow everything down. And of course, the person who suffers the most is the patient. But it doesn't matter whether it's a patient or whether it's a customer, because if a customer is waiting for some D9 Caterpillar, which is a huge earth-moving piece of machinery, because they need to build roads, and your manufacturing teams aren't working together well because of human relation dysfunction, then you're not going to deliver that multi-million-dollar piece of equipment to the site that you're supposed to deliver it to, and you're going to lose millions and millions and millions of dollars of future contracts. So whether or not you're building some huge earth-moving piece of equipment, or whether or not you're taking out somebody's appendix, if you ascend to a higher level of management, you are merely managing people so that people can work together, so they can accomplish whatever it is they're supposed to do, whether or not they're in heavy-duty construction or they're in the hospital. But most people in management they just want peace. I just want everyone to get along. It's the number one complaint of people in management. How do I get everyone to get along? How do I get everybody singing from the same songbook? How do I get everybody playing together nicely? And the reason that we say that in management, because we're used to being playground monitors or referees. But it's because we were never taught psychology. So we might know how to build a D9 Caterpillar. We might know how to take out an appendix. We might know how to increase bottlenecks and efficiency on assembly lines. But if we don't know anything about psychology, then we don't know how to resolve conflict. And conflict is costly. So in this 7th video in our 10-part or 10 commandments of conflict resolution, I don't want you to think about, oh, poor me, poor me, poor me. I have to play referee. I don't want you to think like that. I don't want you to think about yourself. I want you to think about the two parties that are warring with each other. Because the reason that you have to think about those two parties warring with each other is that if you don't control the combustion of conflict, okay? If you don't control the combustion of conflict, then what we were saying in the 6th video is things are going to explode. And the reason that they're going to explode is because of emotional responses. We used an example of the .com. Everybody emotionally, in the .com time, everybody jumped on board with something that they didn't understand at all. They responded emotionally, and the emotion actually was greed. I mean, a similar thing, was happening with these meme coins that Elon Musk was joking about during Mother's Day on Saturday Night Live, when he was the host of Saturday Night Live in 2021. And there was a joke he had with his mother. He said, "Mom, I got you a really nice Mother's Day present." And his mother says, "As long as it's not Dogecoin." And the price of Dogecoin just dived, okay? Because people respond emotionally. But the trouble with conflict resolution is, if we don't control the conflict gets out of control. And the word picture I used in the 6th video in our series was that things blow up. So just think combustion. So you as a manager have to control the combustion in a conflict situation. Because if you don't control the combustion, what's going to happen is that the two warring parties are going to overreact, and that's what happens in a combustion situation in chemistry, is that whatever the reaction is that's happening with the chemicals, the reaction gets out of control, and when a chemical reaction gets out of control, it typically explodes. And that's why I was saying there's a parallelism between chemistry and economics and interpersonal or social dynamics in the workplace. So if your thought is all about, I just don't want this hassle, I just want people to get along, then honestly, you're being selfish. You're only thinking about yourself and what a hassle this is for you. And I'm not arguing that it isn't a hassle. I mean, we wish our employees and our subordinates, would act more like adults and less like children. But if your focus is, I want them to stop fighting, your focus needs to be the opposite end of the spectrum as far as a reaction's concerned. You want to avoid them blowing up, because if they blow up at each other, they're going to harbor something that in psychology we call resentment. Okay, and there's lots and lots of studies about this. This resentment takes root and it does not go away. In other words, these two parties that are warring in your office right now, even when things appear to be at peace because you got them to play nice on a playground, they go back to their own offices. They go back to their own departments. They go back to their own branch offices. And you know what? Deep down inside, they harbor this resentment that they were hard done by. And any energy, emotion, or effort that they waste on their resentment, or this sense of bitterness, or this sense of injustice, is energy, emotion, effort. They are not focusing into doing the very thing that they're in a position of management or a position of authority to do. They're not getting their job done. So what you want to avoid is when things blow up. That's why we call this controlling the combustion of conflict. Because when a conflict is not resolved properly, it escalates to the point that it actually can explode. And when there's an explosion, there is always long-term damage. And in this case, you're going to have interdepartmental, interoffice, or interpersonal damage between the parties that think they're right. And that's because you were more focused on just trying to get this over with, as opposed to being focused on not letting the reaction get out of control. So in the next part of our series, we're going to talk about how to control combustion and conflict by deactivating or defusing a potentially explosive situation. Because if you let the reaction get out of control, the costs are enormous, and the costs are long standing, and the costs can cost you your job, or if you're the CEO, it can even cost you your company.